Welcome to our lesson on classifying triangles. Congruent sides. Congruent sides are sides that have the same length. Congruent means same, so same length. Classifying triangles by congruent sides. Basically, there's three different words that we can use to classify a triangle depending on how many congruent sides that it has. So in the first triangle that we're looking at right here, what we notice is that none of the side lengths are the same. This is called a scalene triangle, which means all sides are different. There's no congruent sides here. All right, the next triangle, you may remember this from last year, but these little dashes are called tick marks. And they indicate that these two sides are equivalent. They are congruent. So in this triangle, we've got two sides that are congruent, and so we call that an isosceles. Isosceles triangle, which again means two sides are the same. The way that I try to memorize this is that isosceles kind of sounds like eyeball. So I think of it as you have two eyes. So the isosceles is two of the same side. And then the third triangle that we have here, we see there are three tick marks, which means all three sides of that triangle are exactly the same length. They are all equal. So the way that I think of this one is all the sides are equal, so it's called an equilateral triangle, which again means all three, of course, because a triangle has three sides, all three sides are congruent or the same. Sorry, it's a little sloppy. Congruent or the same. Okay, so that's classifying them by their sides, either scalene, isosceles, or equilateral, depending on how many congruent sides the triangle has. Now, there's another way to classify triangles as well, and this is classifying them by their angle measures. So, one name that we can give a triangle is right triangle. And we only need one right angle here in order to call it a right triangle. So it just means there's one right angle. Another name that we can give to a triangle is acute triangle. And you can see this second example here, all three of these angles are acute. So an acute triangle is when all three angles are acute, all three of them. And then the last name that we can give, the third name that we can give to a triangle based on its angle measures is obtuse. We can name it an obtuse triangle if there is one obtuse angle. All right, so we're going to take a look here at, whoops, sorry about that. We're going to take a look here at some examples. It says classify each triangle by its angle measure and its side length. So let's just try two questions here really quick. Let's try number 1 and let's try number 4. Number 1, we can see that the angle measures are 107, 53, and 20. We can also see that none of the side lengths are the same. They're all different sizes. So I'm going to give it a first name, which is its angle measure. Like I mentioned, there is an obtuse angle right here. So we're going to call it obtuse. And remember, my options were either right, acute, or obtuse. So since there's one obtuse, we're going to call it obtuse. And then I'm going to give it what I call a last name. So I gave it its angle measure name and then its side length name. None of these sides are the same, so it's going to be called obtuse scalene. And remember, if 2 of the sides were the same, we would have called it isosceles, and if 3 were all the same, we would have called it equilateral. All right, let's look at number 4. In example number 4, when I look at the outside of my triangle, I see there's a 5, and a 7. And then I'm trying to look here to see if there are any special angles, and I do see one. I see a right angle here. So its angle measure name is going to be right, and its last name or side length name is going to be isosceles, because 2 of the side lengths are the same. So right isosceles. All right. What I want you to do is pick any of these triangles, any of them, 1 through 5, and add up the 3 angle measures that I gave you. What you'll find, and you may remember this from last year, but what you'll find is that the angle measures will add up to 180 degrees, no matter what kind of triangle you're looking at, isosceles or scalene or equilateral. Even if you're looking at a right triangle or acute or obtuse, the angle measures always add up to be exactly 180 degrees. So that being said, what I want you to think about is, how would I find the missing angle measure below? So here, this kind of gives me 2 angles, and I want to find the third in both examples 1 and 2. And then down here in example 3, you actually have to find measures A, B, C, D, and E. And I'm going to give you a hint. You need to use your knowledge of triangles being 180 degrees, but you also have to use your knowledge of side lengths, or not side lengths, but of supplementary and complementary and all of that. So good luck and try that on your own. We will go over it in class.